Hey guys, tonight we dive, barefoot and slightly nose pinched, into the unfiltered world of ancient Roman laundry. Yep, you're about to spend a full day as a humble Phalonica worker, deep in the suds and sludge of a Roman laundromat. The sun hasn't even peeked over the terracotta rooftops, and already the neighborhood reeks of vinegar, soot, and public urinals. Welcome to Subura, Rome's messiest, most chaotic district, and your home. You've grown awake on a straw-stuffed mattress in a room barely big enough to sit up in. One wall leaks moisture. Another houses your neighbors snoring. Above, your ceiling is someone else's floor. The scent of mildew hugs your nostrils, and your legs ache from yesterday's 8-hour stomp in fermented urine. Oh yes, if you're wondering, no, you probably wouldn't survive this job for more than a week. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I'd love to know. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You roll off your mat, avoiding the chamber pot in the corner, and tug on your work tunic. It smells like, well, like all your tunics, slightly scorched wool with notes of vinegar, urine, and sweat. There's no point trying to wash it. It's been baptized in Phalonica waters too many times. Outside, Subura's alleyways are already buzzing. The baker's oven roars. Someone's shouting about stolen sandals. A goat trots past, chewing on what looks like last week's grocery list. You squeeze through the narrow corridors, careful not to trip over the cracked cobbles or the toddler chewing on a wooden spoon. Your first task of the day, urine collection. Not glamorous, but absolutely essential. You carry 2 clay jars, head straight for the local public pot, a large amphora chained beside a street corner. Romans, ever resourceful, didn't waste anything, including bodily fluids. The ammonia in urine, top-notch degreaser. You tip one amphora, hoping it's full. Jackpot? Someone's had a long night. Most people hurry past, noses wrinkled, but to you, this is liquid gold. Literally, Emperor Vespasian even taxed this stuff, and when his son protested, he reportedly held up a coin and asked, "Does it smell?" Historians still argue whether the quote is genuine or a snarky invention of later satirists. You dodge a cart piled high with cabbages, wave to old Tullia the fishmonger, and lug your jars back home for a quick rinse. Of your face, not your jars. Those are going straight to work. Inside your cramped insula, your younger cousin's already up, nibbling on cold porridge and staring gloomily at a wine-stained tunic she'll be scrubbing by mid-morning. Gus, which senator puked on this? She mutters. You don't have to guess. The embroidery screams, Lucius Druncus. You pop a bite of stale bread into your mouth, still warm from the baker's coals, and head for the Phalonica. It's on the next block along. Low building with steam curling from its roof and laundry flapping like surrender flags in the morning breeze. The moment you step inside, your nostrils singe with the mingled scents of sour wine, bleach, and despair. The owner, Flavius, a portly man with a voice like a dying trumpet, greets you with a wave of his grease-stained ledger. You're late. The senator's cloak has maggot holes. Classic Flavius exaggeration. You stow your jars and join the others. 8 of you, barefoot and bleary-eyed. Someone's already started the mash-up dance in the big vat. You sigh, roll up your tunic, and prepare to step in. The liquid's lukewarm. That's the kindest thing that can be said about it. Your feet squelch into the soapy slop. It bubbles faintly, not from soap, but from the potent combo of Fuller's clay water and ammonia-rich urine. You stomp with a rhythm heel to toe, twist, and back. It's part cleaning, part aerobic workout, and 100% disgusting. While your legs go numb, your mind drifts. You remember a story Flavius once told. That Emperor Elagabalus once had purple cloaks washed here. Highly unlikely, but hey, it's fun to imagine you're stomping royalty. A rat skitters along the ceiling beam. You try not to look up, The guy beside you, Marcus, lets out a groan. My cousin says she's moving to Britannia. Says the streets are clean there. You both snort. Britannia. Clean. That's a good one. An hour in, your arms and calves throb. You think longingly of your next break. But first, someone hands you a tunic soaked in olive oil and... Wait, is that pigeon poop? You sigh. It's going to be one of those days. You hoist the tunic over your shoulder, wet, slippery, and stinking like a tavern's floor after a Bacchus festival, and toss it into the rinse bucket. But there's no time to savor the relief of stepping out of the wash vat, because now comes your second vital duty of the morning, topping up the day's pee supply. Oh yes, it's time to revisit Rome's most unsung plumbing system. The communal chamber pots. Out on the street again, the city's warming up. Heat rises off the paving stones as chickens zigzag underfoot. Merchants shout their wares. Dates, honey cakes, fried dormice. You pass the same corner amphora, now joined by two more, and peer inside. You give one a swirl. Not ideal. Someone's been drinking watered down wine again. Too weak. The other, though, has a rich yellow hue that's practically glowing. Prime ammonia. You scoop with practiced grace, careful not to spill a drop on your sandals. You've made that mistake before. Your skin didn't forgive you for a week. You make a few more rounds, visiting pots near the tavern and public latrine. The best urine, oddly enough, comes from those who drink the worst wine. It's stronger, more acidic, just what your vat stew needs. You also spot a clever boy perched beside a pot, offering fresh fill-ups for a coin ovation. Roman style. Historians still argue whether this street urine collection was formalized with licenses or just a who dares wins kind of operation. But one thing's clear, you're part of a massive circular economy, and while no one brags about it, everyone relies on it. Rome's version of going green, just yellow. By mid-morning, your jars are full again, and your arms ache from carrying them. Back at the Phalonica, Flavius waves you over with a sneer. The new boy used too much water. The vat's weak. You sigh and tip in your haul. The mixture hisses faintly. Balance restored. The floor's slick with overflow, and a junior worker, barely 12, slips and lands in a puddle. No injuries, unless you count his pride. Everyone laughs. It's all part of the day's rhythm. Then comes the worst part scraping. Some stains won't budge, not even with your magic mix. So you kneel on the stone bench, grab the flat scraper, and start on a senator's tunic that's been dabbed with olive oil and, suspiciously, purple pigment. You mutter, trying to fake nobility again, as you work the thick cloth. The smell is sharp, but at least it's not the fermented fish surprise from last week. Around you, conversations flow like water through aqueducts. One woman swears she saw a Vestal virgin eating garlic. Taboo. Another claims her cousin's friend's brother glimpsed the emperor sneezing in public. Gasp. The horror. Meanwhile, someone hums a tune about a soldier and a baker's wife. Scandalous and definitely not safe for the Senate floor. You scrape, dip, stomp, repeat. The work is relentless, but the rhythm is hypnotic. There's comfort in routine, in the steam that curls off the vats, the slap of wet cloth on stone, the slosh of pails being emptied. Time blurs. At one point, a familiar face pops in, old Severina, who once worked here but now sells love potions near the forum. She drops off a bundle her daughter's bridal tunic. Make it shine, or she'll never marry up, she says, pressing a denarius into your hand. You nod, already eyeing the wine stain blooming like a bad omen across the chest. You get a quick breath of fresh air near the back doorway, just long enough to spot a stray cat trotting off with a leftover pigeon head. Rome never lacks for drama, even in its alleys. One of the fullers tosses you a dry rag. Wipe your brow, not the tunics. You chuckle. Then, as if on cue, Flavius bellows again. Get ready, we've got more cloaks coming. Parade season. You've grown. Parade season means dyes, embroidery, elaborate stitching, and people who want their togas snow white like they never attended 3 banquets in a row. You've got your work cut out for you. Still, you can't help but grin as you head back in. Because somewhere in this muck, this stench, and this absurdity, you're keeping the eternal city clothed. And hey, your feet haven't gone completely numb yet. Back inside the Phalonica, you slide past the steaming vats and hanging cords of freshly washed tunics to the heart of your world, the central work floor. It's chaos, but it's your chaos. Heat curls off the stone walls, mixing with a foggy mist from the warm rinse tanks. Somewhere above, skylights try their best to light the gloom. But Rome's laundry dungeons were never meant to sparkle. The Phalonica hums with its usual symphony, the slosh of water, the thunk of scrubbed cloth, the rhythmic thud of bare feet in washing tubs, and the occasional shouted insult. There's also the unmistakable metallic clatter of a bronze tuning hook being dropped again. By young Marius. He's new. He thinks washing means shaking a toga like it's angry at him. Flavius looms near the door, arms crossed over his stained apron, eyes flicking like a hawk scanning for laziness. He's the kind of boss who can smell idle hands before he sees them. You nod in his direction, then grab a load of tunics, soaked in vinegar and fuller's clay. Each garment tells a story. There's a child's linen shirt, splattered with what might be berry juice, or something more alarming. A senator's cloak crusted in wine and ash, possibly from his own burning villa last week, and a rather fine silk tunic from a woman who's clearly been parading around the Palatine Hill. Sabina, the tag reads. You groan. Sabina is one of those clients. Her silk is so delicate it practically melts at the sight of ammonia, yet she insists on Phalonica service. Make it as fresh as a Vestal, she once sniffed. You'd love to remind her that Vestals didn't stump their clothes and pee. Still, business is business. You lay the tunic on the rinsing bench and dab a mixture of chalk powder and egg yolk onto the worst of the stains. A trick you learned from an old Cappadocian washer. Historians still argue whether this technique came from the East or was just a Roman invention born of desperation and breakfast leftovers. The silk shimmers as you gently scrub with a woven wool pad. One careless tug and the fabric might tear. You hold your breath and success. The stain lightens. You rinse it delicately, avoiding the main vat, and drape it across the ivory rack, reserved for elite garments only. Just then, Gaius, the joker of your crew, holds up something odd. Found a fish tail in the senator's sheets, he announces. Everyone groans. Or maybe a prank from the cook. You shake your head. Last week it was olive pits. The week before, someone found half a wax tablet. Either senators live wild lives or their slaves have a wicked sense of humor. As noon creeps in, the light shifts from golden to blinding white. You can feel it slicing through the skylights, highlighting the steam like smoke on a battlefield. Your hands are raw, your tunic clings to your ribs, and your mouth tastes like lime soap. It's time. Break. You back away from the bench and head to the courtyard. It's small, square, and surprisingly peaceful. A cracked marble fountain gurgles in the center. Decorative, not drinkable. You flop onto a stone ledge and unwrap your lunch. A hunk of barley bread, a sliver of goat cheese, and a pot of garum. Glorious, salty, fermented fish sauce. Rome's ketchup. You dunk your bread and chew, listening to the gossip swirl around you. One woman swears she saw Emperor Domitian in disguise at the market, buying figs. He was wearing sandals, common ones. Another claims her cousin's friend is now a gladiator's mistress. The one with the scar like a lightning bolt. You contribute your own tale, how Flavius once mistook a senator's wife's undergarments for a tablecloth and used them to mop up wine. No one believes you, but everyone laughs. As you stretch, your back cracks like a dry papyrus scroll. You glance up at the strip of sky above, blue, cloudless, indifferent. Somewhere beyond, the forum hums, senators posture, poets declaim, and generals plot. But down here, in the heart of Rome's labor, laundry reigns. And the afternoon shift is calling. Lunch fades from your stomach as quickly as the sun climbs higher, dragging the heat with it. Back inside the Phalonica, the vats have turned murky, the stones are slicker, and your legs sigh with the weight of a day already half spent. But no time to dawdle. Your feet have a date with the vat again. And trust me, it's not going to be a romantic one. You roll up your tunic, step onto the edge of the stone tub, and plunge in with a practiced squelch. The liquid inside is warm, unsettlingly so. It sloshes around your ankles with a sour aroma that could peel the lacquer off a Roman chariot. You know exactly what's in this mix: fuller's clay, rich in degreasing minerals, old wine dregs, and, of course, that pungent miracle cleaner, urine. If this was modern times, it would come with a hazmat label. Around you, the other Pholones begin their rhythmic march. Left foot, right foot, twist, stump. It's like some grimy line dance, choreographed by Saturn himself. You find the beat slipping into a trance like flow. Your toes grip the stone floor as you churn the fabric beneath the surface. Silk swirls with wool, linen tumbles like laundry soup. One of your coworkers, an old Gaul named Brictius, hums a funeral dirge as he stomps. Keeps the gods entertained. He explains, dead serious. According to him, fullers who stop singing invite bad spirits and bad batches. You hum along just in case. Can't hurt. Today's load includes tunics from a local theater troupe, meaning stage blood, wine, and at least one suspicious smear of grease paint. There's also a merchant's robe, reeking of fish scales and optimism. And the paie sedere assistance, a magistrate's toga, wide as a ship's sail and twice as fussy. It's already tangled around your ankles like a vengeful sea creature. You wrestle it free, lifting the soggy weight with a grunt. As it slaps against the edge of the vat, you hear a squish that can only be described as soul-crushing. Did I just stomp on an eel? You mutter. Brictius leans over, grinning. Better than a sea urchin. That happened once in Capua. Historians still argue whether eel-based dyes were ever a thing, or just a cruel prank played on gullible apprentices. By now your calves are burning. You glance down and see your feet stained gray, blue from the clay. You're basically part statue at this point. A new worker nearby stumbles, nearly falling face first into the vat. You reach out and steady him. Bend the knees. Always bend the knees. Veteran wisdom, passed down from foot, stomper to foot, stomper. Steam thickens the air. Every breath tastes like vinegar and sweat. You wipe your forehead with a cloth so used it's practically see-through. Somewhere across the room, Gaius makes a farting noise with his mouth, then looks around innocently. Wasn't me. That's gassy today. Everyone groans. He does this every afternoon. You switch vats. This one's for light, colored garments. It's clearer, colder, and slightly less smelly. Only slightly. A toga praetexta. A white robe with a purple stripe. Floats gently near the surface. That purple. It's not grape juice. It's Tyrian dye, squeezed from thousands of murex snails. It costs more than your annual wage. You handle it like it's sacred scrolls. One stain and it's your neck. You begin your footwork again, slower now. This vat isn't for wild stomping. It's more of a waltz. Light, careful, respectful. You whisper a little prayer to Minerva. Not for luck. For grace. Grace enough to not fall in and ruin the most expensive toga in Subira. As the sun tips toward its descent, the vat's quiet. Garments are lifted out, dripping and heavy, each one wrung by hand, and passed to the rinsers. You step out at last, your legs shaking like they've run the length of the Appian Way. A slave hands you a cloth for your feet. You wipe, though you know the smell will linger till Saturnalia. You lean against the wall, breathing deep. The kind of deep that pulls from your ribs. A sudden shout breaks your moment. Someone stole my drying tunic? Flavius bellows from the yard. You sigh. Tunic thieves again. As if your day wasn't wet enough already, you wring out your legs. Yes, your legs, because they feel like soaked cloth. And haul yourself toward the main bench. That senator's wife's silk tunic still waits, glistening in the afternoon light like an overripe fig. Sabina, that's her name. And her laundry habits are the stuff of Phalonica legend. Her tunics have seen more amphora spills and perfume accidents than a teenage patrician at her first Saturnalia. You lay the silk out carefully, smooth the folds, and prepare for one of your most delicate tasks, treating with the least destructive materials available, which today includes chalk powder, vinegar, soaked wool, and, because Flavius insists it's the good stuff, a paste of crushed bay leaves and fish gall. No, you don't ask where he gets it. Dabbing at the stain, you realize it's not wine this time. It's something darker, maybe pomegranate juice. That, or one of Rome's stranger face paints, the kind elite women wear to look youthful, which usually ends up looking like they lost a bet. The silk hisses under your breath. You whisper calming things to it like it's a baby griffin. Gentle pressure, tiny circles, no sudden movements. You're halfway through the second sleeve when Gaius passes by and nudges you. You miss the prank vat. You look up. He's grinning. Check the last pile. Someone tossed in a fish head. You groan. Not again. Last time, it was anchovies. Someone thought it was funny to see how long it would take for Flavius to notice. Joke's on them. He blamed you when the senator's cloak came out smelling like Poseidon's laundry basket. You set down Sabina's tunic and shuffle to the rinse corner. There it is, a single small, silvery fish tail, bobbing in a swirl of laundry foam. It blinks at you. You mutter. But secretly, you're impressed. The prankster managed to sneak it in without you noticing, and that takes skill. As you scoop it out with a ladle, you remember that fringe tidbit you once overheard at the bathhouse. Some Roman bath attendants believed fish bits in water improved skin texture. Beauty tip or urban myth? Historians still argue whether these practices had actual health benefits or were just old wives' tales slathered in olive oil. You toss the tail into the scrap bucket and go back to Sabina's tunic, now rinsing gently in a basin of cold water and lemon extract. Your hands sting from the acidity, but the silk gleams. Mission accomplished. You lay it flat, pat it dry, and whisper, "If you ruin yourself before delivery, I swear to Jupiter." And right on cue, Flavius calls out your name. The senator's towels, they're stained with something unholy. You approach the pile, expecting wine, maybe garum, or some mysterious foreign-born slime. But no, this is worse. A brownish streak of something foul-smelling smeared across the entire towel, like someone lost a bet in dignity at the same time. You look to Flavius. Animal dung. He shakes his head. His exotic pet monkey escaped. Sat on the towels. You blink. He has a monkey. From India. Tiny thing. Evil eyes. He hands you the scrub brush. Fix it. So now, with sore hands and shrinking patience, you kneel before the monkey, bless towels and begin the ritual scrubbing with vinegar, ash, and a prayer to any god who'll listen. The towel fizzes slightly under the mix. That's normal. Flavius says, like he's a toga whisperer. It's nearing the end of your midday slog when a sharp whistle pierces the air. The Lenin inspector is here. A surprise visit, of course. You mutter something about curse timing and quickly stow anything fishy. Smelling, literally. The inspector, a lean man with a face carved from disapproval, prowls the work floor like a hawk among chickens. He sniffs towels. He lifts tunics to the light. He asks questions like, was this rinsed twice? Or, why does this cloak smell like the docks? You stand rigid as he approaches your bench. He picks up Sabina's tunic. You hold your breath. He sniffs once, twice, then a nod. A single solemn nod. You exhale. Acceptable, he says, before vanishing into the steam like a disapproving ghost. Gaius whispers, that's the closest he's come to smiling. Ever. You allow yourself a grin. Brief. You still have the senator's sheets to deal with. The sun tips past its peak now, casting long, soft shadows across the Phalonica's open courtyard. The worst of the stomping and scrubbing is done, at least for the moment, and it's time for the midday break. A brief lull in the endless parade of stains, stinks, and surprise monkey incidents. You step outside into the warmth, blinking like a mole dragged into daylight. There's a long stone bench against the wall where the crew gathers, dripping, dusty, and half dead with fatigue. You sit with a sigh, back crackling like old parchment, and unwrap your second helping of food barley bread, again, but this time with a dab of dried fig paste and a side of salty olives. As always, the moment food appears, so does gossip. Did you hear about Marcia? Asks Livia, her mouth full of lentils. Caught sneaking out of the baths with that Greek sculptor, the one with the marble thighs. Please. Gaia snorts. If I had a denarius for every tryst in the thermae of Titus, I'd be drinking Falernian wine, not vinegar. Someone snickers. Someone else pretends to faint at the mention of marble thighs. You just chew quietly, eyes half closed, enjoying the warm breeze and the brief illusion of peace. A dog barks somewhere down the alley. A child screams joyfully. The city hums. Just on the other side of this wall, you pass around a small pot of garum, Rome's favorite umami balm, and dab your bread into the syrupy, fermented fish sauce. It's fall to newcomers, but to you, heaven. Better than honey on a cold day. I'd clean Jupiter's toga for a barrel of this. Someone jokes. And Venus's undergarments for two. You all laugh. A little too hard. Then, inevitably, the gladiator talk begins. Taurus fought again yesterday. Broke a man's arm like snapping a twig. That comes from Brictius, ever the fan of violence, as entertainment. They say he's got a new lover, a baker's daughter. I thought it was the miller's wife. Both. You smirk. But he doesn't wash his own loincloth. Not unless he stomps it in his enemy's tears. Another round of laughter. Gaius pulls a splinter from his heel. Wouldn't mind a match myself. Get famous. Leave the vats behind. You snort. You. In the arena. You slip on tunic strings. He grins. Yeah. But I'd look good doing it. The break drags just long enough to lull you into thinking it could last forever. But then you hear the telltale clatter of the drying racks being wheeled out. Time to get vertical. The courtyard's drying lines are strung between tall wooden frames, and the sun-drenched breeze is your only ally. You carry a dripping load of washed linens, carefully sorted by owner, fabric, and rank. Gods help you if you mix a plebeian tunic with a patrician cloak. You clip them to the lines using carved wooden pegs, squinting against the glare. Everything flaps like battle standards, togas, tunics, bedsheets, and the occasional underrobe. You work quickly. Sunlight is Rome's most honest bleach. Then comes the tension watching for thieves. Kids from the alley sometimes dart in, grab a fresh tunic, and vanish like smoke. They sell them at the market or trade for sweets. You've seen it happen. Once, someone stole a senator's undergarments and left behind a note. Too itchy. So you watch, squinting toward the street. A group of children play with a stick and hoop nearby. Innocent, or recon scouts. A dog lounges beneath the drying rack, tail thumping. Possibly in on it. Rain is also a risk. The skies are blue now, but Roman weather can turn faster than a charioteer in a tight curve. You keep an eye out for distant clouds. The faintest scent of ozone puts everyone on alert. As you reach to pin up a toga virilis, a coming-of-age garment for Roman boys, you spot a corner unstitching. Great? The last thing you need is someone accusing you of ruining their son's big day. You set it aside for mending. It's then you notice a square of cloth fluttering awkwardly at the end of the line. Not yours. You pull it down. Embroidered initials, CL. Not a customer's. Gaius, you realize, his idea of a joke, sneaking in a rag with crude doodles of the boss. You'll get him back, maybe with a fish tail in his laundry bucket tomorrow. By now the sun hangs lower. Shadows stretch long across the cobbled yard. The linens ripple like waves on a marble sea. You're halfway through the last batch when you hear Flavius shout, "Storm coming. Pull it in." You look up. Sure enough, a black smear is bleeding across the western sky. Rome's finest dryers become a frenzy. Lines are unclipped, fabrics folded, runners racing in and out of doorways. You grab an armful and hustle inside, just as the first cool drop hits your cheek. Inside, the steam feels thicker than before, but the rain stays outside, drumming softly against the tiled roof. You made it. Barely. The rain doesn't last long, just a quick spit from the heavens, like Jupiter clearing his throat. But it's enough to throw the whole drying schedule into chaos. You stare out at the courtyard, where the once flapping linens now hang limp and soggy, darkened by water and mood alike. Inside, the Falonica is a symphony of towels being wrung by hand and curses muffled under breath. One of the newer boys actually cries when his entire rack of tunics is deemed too wet for delivery. Flavius mutters something about deducting from his pay, which, considering the boy earns more soap rash than coin, feels especially cruel. You, meanwhile, are on rooftop duty. Up a narrow, creaking stairwell and out onto the top of the Falonica, Rome sprawls before you. Domes, smoke trails, distant aqueducts like stone centipedes crawling across the hills. The rooftops are where the trickiest drying happens. You've got wind, pigeons, and gravity all working against you. You reach the racks and start laying out a batch of senator's linens, the kind that gets ironed with heated bronze paddles and smells faintly of rose oil and insecurity. The wind's picking up, tugging at the edges. You secure each cloth with heavy stones, standard practice, even if it makes the togas look like they're preparing for burial. Below, Sabura is waking up again after the midday lull. A woman argues with a fish vendor. Two boys chase each other with sticks. Somewhere, a lute twangs off key. Life moves, laundry dries. And then you see them, kids. Half a dozen, maybe 7. Creeping up the outer stair. Tunic thieves. You squint, they've got the look. Bare feet, oversized cloaks. One with a satchel clearly meant for found items. You whistle low, alerting Brickius down below, who starts up the stairs with the slow menace of someone who's chased off more than one laundry bandit in his day. The kids spot him. One tosses a stone, not at Brickius, but at your drying rack. The stone hits squarely. A white tunic lifts into the air like a startled dove and flutters straight off the roof. You lunge. You don't catch it. It drifts, floats, and lands in the gutter, where it immediately begins soaking up whatever mysterious black liquid currently flowing through the streets of Sabura. Great. Just perfect. You retrieve it with a pole, hold it up. Stained, possibly cursed, definitely not ready for senatorial skin. You mutter something to Mars and flop it over your shoulder. Back to the pre-wash bin it goes. By the time Brickius returns, the kids are gone, and you're too tired to curse them creatively. You just nod. They got one. He shrugs. Could have been worse. Could have been my lunch. Back downstairs, the Falonica's calmed a bit. The clouds have scattered. The afternoon's ticking on, and Flavius, ever the opportunist, is inspecting the racks for damage. Some garments didn't make it. He sniffs. Neither did my dignity, you mumble. What? Nothing, sir. Just admiring the humidity. You help hang the salvageable garments in the warmest inner room. Nicknamed the Dragon's Den, because of the intense heat and constant threat of scorched linen. It's lit by braziers and smells like old sandalwood and hot clay. You handle each item carefully, checking for singes, remembering the time someone burned a hole through a general's battle tunic and blamed it on sunlight concentration. Historians still argue whether Roman generals truly wore their battle gear to dinner parties or just liked the smell of bronze. With the last item hung, you step back and stretch, vertebrae popping like knuckles. The afternoon sun is low now, turning the Falonica golden in places, bronze in others. For a brief moment, amid the steam and stench, and the lingering odor of fish-based detergents, it's almost beautiful. Then you trip over a soapstone bucket and stub your toe. Back to reality. The sharp knock of wood on stone rings out across the Falonica. Distinct, deliberate, and unmistakable. Every washer, ringer, and stomper freezes. You all know that sound. It's the cane of the Lanista, not the gladiator trainer, mind you, but worse, the Lenin inspector. And this one's got the temperament of a sour fig and the nose of a bloodhound. You stand straighter, subtly nudging the bucket you just tripped over under the bench. Around you, others shuffle rags into neater piles, and Gaius actually wipes his face on something that might have been a senator's nightshirt. Desperate times. The Lanista enters like a Roman storm. Tall, cloaked, and already frowning. His name is Crispinus, and he inspects laundry the way some men inspect legions, with suspicion and the occasional sniff. He sweeps into the room with a dramatic flourish, eyes narrowing at every rack, every bundle, every drop of suspicious moisture. You brace yourself. He approaches your section first. Of course he does. He begins with Sabina's silk tunic, the one you coddled like a temple relic. He lifts it, squints, and holds it to the light. For a moment, you think you're clear. Then he sniffs. You can almost hear the collective inhale of the room. He frowns. Hints of vinegar. Acceptable. Slightly overtreated, but passable. You want to weep with relief. He moves on to the next items, the monkey-tainted towel. You thought you'd buried that in the bottom of the reject pile, but Crispinus has a sixth sense for chaos. He lifts it. Sniffs. He gags. What in the name of Vesta is this? You open your mouth to answer, but Gaius, bless him and curse him, pipes up from across the room. Experimental aromatics, sir. From Alexandria. There's a moment of silence, so thick you could wring it out and hang it to dry. Crispinus turns slowly. Do I look like a fool? Everyone wisely says nothing. He slams the towel onto the bench and scribbles something in his wax tablet. Probably a poetic curse. You'll never know. But the message is clear. Don't mess up again. He continues his rounds, and you retreat to the edge of the room, where the rejected cloths pile like battlefield casualties. You're not alone. A few others join you. Tunic-trittage nurses, whispering prayers to Mercury for quick hands, and no more inspections. You pick up a toga with a wine blot the size of an amphora. It belongs to someone important, based on the golden embroidery near the hem. You don't ask how it got there. You just start blotting, gently dabbing, with a cloth soaked in laurel water and lime. While you work, you hear Crispinus lecturing near the exit. Laundry is the soul of the city, he says. If your cloths are filthy, your minds are worse. Historians still argue whether Lanista actually held such lofty opinions of their work, or were just bored enough to pretend. He finally leaves, his cane tapping a judgmental beat behind him. As the door shuts, a collective sigh fills the room. Someone claps. Someone else mutters, "Next time, we hide under the vats." You go back to your pile, still recovering. The workday is waning, but the emergencies keep coming. Flavius appears at your elbow, red-faced and panting. "Imperial cloak, dignitary from Gaul? It's ripped." You blink, and you know how to sew. You do. Barely. You once stitched your sandal back together with pig gut and prayer. He thrusts a bundle of heavy red wool into your hands. Fix it before sunset. No pressure. You take the cloak to the back room, the only quiet corner of the Phalonica. It smells faintly of beeswax and regret. You spread the fabric across the bench. The tear isn't huge, just a jagged gash along the seam, but it's in a highly visible spot. You'll need to hide it, or risk the dignitary showing up at the forum looking like a shredded scroll. You grab a curved needle, waxed thread, and start sewing. The thread bites your fingers. The wool resists. Every stitch pulls like you're negotiating a peace treaty. You murmur to yourself, a soft lull of nonsense just to keep your rhythm. Halfway through, Gaius sticks his head in. Need help? You don't look up, unless you can convince a Gallic noble to switch to sleeveless fashion. No. He chuckles and disappears. The final stitch is neat, the fold smooth, the patch barely visible. You hold it up and squint. Not bad. Jupiter himself might wear it. You bundle it and hand it to Flavius, who grunts something resembling praise. You return to your bench, exhausted but oddly triumphant. The cloak incident should have earned you a moment's rest, maybe even a celebratory olive or two. Instead, you're sent running across the alley with a fresh load of linens for the final rinse. You grip the wooden pail's handle, its weight pulling your shoulder low, and duck out into the Sabura street again, swerving to avoid a runaway chicken and a group of children playing knucklebones in the mud. You're halfway across when disaster strikes. The ground is slick, the stones uneven, and your sandal, traitorous as always, slips forward. You lurch, the pail tilts, and with all the drama of a Roman tragedy, the entire bucket of rinse water, infused with vinegar, chalk, and your remaining dignity, crashes into the cobblestones. You freeze. The contents splatter impressively across the road, soaking the hem of your tunic and trailing like a comet across the hoof of a passing horse. Not just any horse. This one is draped in silk and gold, clearly belonging to someone very important. A rider jerks the reins. The horse rears, neighs, and flings a half-peeled fig across the street. You look up and lock eyes with the rider, a senator. You know this because he's wearing the full outfit. Tunic, toga ego. He stares at you aghast. You dare soil the hoof of Imperatrix. You blink. Imperatrix? My horse! You open your mouth. No excuse forms. He leans down, nostrils flaring. You are a washer, yes. You nod. Then wash my hoof. He gestures like a general ordering a siege. And so, humiliated, you kneel in the middle of the street and dab at the horse's leg with the edge of your already wet tunic. The senator sneers, flips a bronze coin into the gutter, and rides off with the dignity of someone who's never touched laundry in his life. You sigh. The coin, now bobbing in the puddle, reads, Vespasian. You mutter, your father taxed urine. He'd understand me. Historians still argue whether Vespasian's infamous Ren tax was as unpopular as the sources claim, or just another shrewd imperial hustle. You refill the bucket, this time double, checking your footing, and limp back to the Phalanca, where no one has noticed your horse washing escapade. Small mercies. Inside, the afternoon light has begun to soften. You return to the rinse basin, which smells marginally better than the wash vats, but still carries the tang of lime, clay, and defeated ambition. You pour the fresh solution into the basin and start the final rinse cycle. By hand, of course. One by one, garments go in, are swished, slapped against the stone sides, and wrung out. You handle them like relics because any damage now means starting over. One tunic slips and splashes your face. You're welcome. You mutter. Gaius passes behind you singing a made-up jingle. Rinse and ring. Praise to the spring. May the toga never cling. You snort. You should write scrolls. I will, he says. When I'm rich and my hands don't smell like goat vinegar. You rinse a senator's undercloak next, dyed a fashionable blue from indigo. Your hands tingle. You once heard a rumor that indigo dye was extracted from fermented plants and imported in stinking bundles. It's probably true. Rome's economy is built on the labor of distant lands and your own chafed palms. As the rinse finishes, you haul the clothes into wicker baskets, dripping and heavy. You don't even bother to dry your arms anymore. They're beyond hope. Then comes the drying, again. This time on stone benches inside the furnace room, warmed by coals and copper pans. You lay them flat, watching for creases, adjusting folds like a toga stylist preparing for a Senate debut. Your fingers work on autopilot now, muscle memory steering each tuck, each press. The air is thick, the heat oppressive, but your focus sharpens. Mistakes here are too costly. One wrinkle in a magistrate's sash, and you'll be scrubbing latrine cloths for a week. As the sun begins its final descent, casting golden shafts through the narrow windows, you finish the last tunic and lean back against the stone wall. Your arms ache, your eyes blur, but the garments lie in neat rows, drying like obedient citizens beneath Rome's fading light. Outside, the sounds of evening swell, vendors closing stalls, laughter from nearby taverns, the faint whistle of someone selling roasted chickpeas. You allow yourself a moment of pride. You've saved a cloak, rinsed a kingdom, and washed a horse's hoof, all in a day's grime. You barely have time to savor the fleeting triumph of a well-folded tunic before Flavius barks your name again from across the floor. The man's lungs must be blessed by Apollo himself, because that shout cuts through steamy air like a gladius. Run, run! And be quick about it. We're low. You blink. Again. You already did the morning rounds. But when Flavius gets that vain, popping forehead look, arguing isn't really an option. So, with reluctant limbs and a very empty stomach, you grab the sloshed out bucket, the same one you tragically spilled earlier, and head back out into the streets of Subura, once more the errand runner of Rome's least glamorous industry. The city is shifting into evening mode now. Lamps are being lit along the main roads, casting flickering pools of yellow against the worn stone. You make your way down alleys and through side streets, dodging puddles and suspiciously sticky patches. The corner chamber pots are fuller now, blessedly so. Evening is prime time for wine-fueled relief. You begin the fill. First pot, decent color, strong scent. Second, a watery, but it'll do. Third, you lift the ladle and hear something slosh, but not from your bucket. Behind you, a drunk stumbles out of a tavern, sloshing what appears to be a chamber pot in your direction. You yelp, step back, and your own bucket tips sideways. Again, a splash, a hiss, and your sandals are christened once more by the gods of humiliation. The drunk laughs.
You a washer.
Looks like you need to wash yourself. You don't respond. You just refill. Slowly. Rage marinating like a fine patrician stew, you finally return to the Phalonica, sopping and smelling like a defeated gladiator's armpit. Gaius meets you at the door, pinching his nose. New colon. Limited edition. You grumble. Back inside, you pour the salvage liquid into the mixing vat, which bubbles faintly with heat. The fullers are already lining up for the last washing cycle. It's rinse and repeat time. Literally. You join the line, tuning out the thud of sandals and the murmur of evening plans. The same rhythm resumes. Soak, stomp, ring, shift. The garments are fewer now, but heavier with end of day grime. One tunic practically groans when you lift it, and you swear it's clinging to itself out of sheer stubbornness. Your feet are raw. Your palms, pruny. Your back feels like a column on the verge of crumbling. Gaius beside you is still humming. I'm gonna open my own Phalonica one day, he says between stomps. Only clean clients. No cloaks, no monkeys, no nobles. You raise an eyebrow. So you'll be bankrupt by Saturnalia. He chuckles. At least I'll die debt-free. One last tunic. You stomp slowly, letting your feet sink deep into the slush. You close your eyes for a second, just a second. But it stretches. You feel yourself drifting, swaying, then a sharp jab in your ribs. Don't nap in the vat. Brick just grunts. You'll drown and ruin the soap. You blink, nod, and step out, feet squelching. As the final rinse ends, you help sort the washed linens into baskets. The ones due for delivery are bundled with colored twine, labeled with ivory tags. You check the names Sabina, Senator Vinius, the baker's apprentice, a new name you don't recognize, Plotus, scribbled in a rush. You stack the baskets in the storeroom, the air thick with lavender sachets, meant to mask the vinegar undertones. They fail. Then comes folding. The art form of the Phalonica. Toga folds are a language all their own, one you've learned through bitter experience and failed inspections. You smooth each item, crease precisely, and arrange them like a mosaic of fabric and fatigue. One by one, the piles grow. Finally, you're done. Flavius nods from the shadows. Tomorrow we do it again. You smile. It's not joy. More like survival. You limp to the water spigot out back and splash your face. The water's cold, sharp, a jolt to the brain. You shake off the worst of the stink. There's still more to do. Floors to scrub. Dogs to chase. But the worst is over. For now. As twilight melts over Rome, and the last clamor of the market fades, the Phalonica takes on a new character. The air cools slightly, The shadows deepen, and the loud chorus of workers fades to a low hum of murmured complaints and distant whistling. But for you, the work isn't quite over. Because when others clock out, you, lucky veteran of the vats, get the honor of doing the final checks. Also known as the soul, destroying rinse, ring, and double check. You grab a pile of linens labeled miscellaneous and head to the side basin. This is the backup rinse station for items that either slipped through the cracks or failed their first inspection. You squint at a tunic with faint reddish stains across the hem. Size. Blood. Die? You wonder aloud. Rome's textiles often tell stories you'd rather not know. The water is cold now. No more warm batches this late. You dunk the tunic and start the gentle swish, trying to loosen whatever's clinging. The fabric resists. You add vinegar. Still stubborn. You sigh and pull out the emergency soap, rendered animal fat and ash, mixed into a gritty paste. It works. It always works. And it always leaves your hands looking like cracked marble. You glance down at your palms. They're raw, red, slightly puckered. You stretch your fingers and wince. The price of acceptable cleanliness. You're convinced half of Rome's aging fullers retired with hands permanently stuck in a claw shape. Beside you, a younger girl scrubs at a child's tunic with such fury that she's splashing more on herself than on the cloth. You reach over, steady her hand, and show the trick twist at the hem. Press down with the wrist, not the fingers. Thanks. She mutters, embarrassed. You smile. Takes time. You'll get it? Somewhere in the back, Gaius belts out a tune, an improvised ballad about a washer who fell in love with a wine cellar and accidentally bleached her wedding dress. It's not good, but it's not meant to be. You hum along as you wring out the last tunic and hang it on the short line by the coals. Your arms are trembling now. Each lift feels like hauling amphorae, the soap rash along your wrist itches. But there's a rhythm to it. One more garment, one more line. You fall into a pace, hypnotic and numb. And then, something unusual, a set of foreign-looking garments at the bottom of the pile, not Roman cut. Narrow sleeves, strange embroidery, smells like cedar and spices. Eastern, maybe Syrian or Egyptian. You lift one up. There's a tiny gold coin stitched into the hem. A charm, perhaps. You pocket it for safekeeping. Delivering it back could mean a tip, or at least some intrigue. Historians still argue whether such charms were common in imported garments or mere superstition stitched into foreign cloth. You rinse them extra carefully, marveling at the dyed patterns. Whoever these belong to, they're well-traveled, probably wealthy, possibly dangerous. By the time you're done, the stars have begun to prick the sky. Rome at night glitters not with electric light, but with oil lamps, torch fires, and the occasional impromptu torch wielding procession. From your spot by the doorway, you glimpse one now. Priests, perhaps, or street performers parading under Jupiter's gaze. Back inside, the shop is nearly empty. A few stragglers fold rags. A boy snores in a corner. Brictius mutters a prayer over the fire before dousing the last brazier. You gather the final set of rinsed cloths and start stacking them on the delivery bench. And then it happens. You notice a tunic from earlier, clean pressed, folded, and it's got a new stain. Not yours. Not from the vats. From someone tracking suit across the floor. You grit your teeth, grab your cloth, and scrub. Not because you're asked, but because no way are you letting a day's work be undone by someone's careless foot. You finish just as Flavius reappears, sniffing the air. Smells better. No fish this time. You nod. He nods back. That's praise. You clean your bench, scrape the soap crust from the edge of the basin, and rub your hands on the communal rag. They sting. Badly. You'll need to soak them tonight in olive oil again, and maybe wrap them in cabbage leaves like the old lady down the alley swears by. Finally, the day's rinse is truly done. With the final cloth hung, and no more vats burbling behind you, it's time for the last act of your daily ritual, the Phallonica cleanup. Less glamorous than cloak, saving, or tunic resurrection, but just as necessary, And by cleanup, of course, they mean you're about to become very well acquainted with a wooden broom, a scrub brush, and a pack of mangy stray dogs that consider the back storeroom their clubhouse. You start by sweeping the floors, which are now coated in a slippery film of soap, clay, and what you sincerely hope is just vinegar. Every stroke of the broom sends a fresh wave of stink upward. You try not to breathe too deeply. There's a rhythm to it. Though sweep, scrape, push, slide. The dirt swirls like storm clouds, settling reluctantly in the drain grates. Then comes the corner sludge, where runoff collects in a murky puddle so dark and brooding, it could write tragic poetry. You kneel, grab the brush, and scrub, hard. Your knuckles knock against stone. Your spine protests. As you move closer to the back door, you hear the soft padding of paws. They're here. The dogs. 3 of them tonight, maybe 4. Hard to tell when they dart in and out of the shadows like suit ghosts. They're not vicious, just opportunists. Laundry scraps sometimes carry treats, bits of food, bone fragments, meat-scented grease. The smallest one, a wiry thing with one floppy ear and a nose like a truffle pig, sniffs your bucket. Not food. You tell him. He sniffs again. Still not food. He barks once, offended, and trots off. You shoo the rest gently. They'll be back, probably before the floor even dries. With the last corner scrubbed, you rinse the stones with a fresh bucket, miraculously unsplashed this time, and watch the soapy water snake its way down the drainage channel. You've always wondered where it ends up. The Tiber? Probably. Or someone's cellar? Gaius wanders by with a broken stool leg under one arm. Weapon repair. Depends. If the dogs revolt. He grins. You're done. Almost. You wipe down the benches, stack the baskets, and gather the stray clothespins, one of which you find lodged inside a sandal. You're not even surprised anymore. Then comes the worst part, the ash bin. All the spent soap paste, used fuller's earth, crushed dye matter. It gets dumped into a pit out back. And tonight, lucky you, it's your turn. You hoist the heavy pail and march into the alley, passing a group of laughing teenagers reenacting a chariot race, using 2 crates and a goat. You dump the bin with a satisfying splatter. The smell? Well, imagine boiled eggs left in the sun. For a week, mixed with burnt hair and something that once dreamed of being floral. You cough. The dog with the floppy ear coughs too. You share a moment. Back inside, the Phalonica is quiet now. The steam has settled. The coals are out. The water basins reflect the low light like mirrors full of secrets. You walk through slowly, checking your stations. The big vat drained, the rinse bowls empty. The cloth racks secure? And then your personal ritual. You reach behind the old dye rack and pull out your stash. A small pot of olive oil, a cracked comb, and a nearly finished biscuit wrapped in cloth. You dip your fingers in the oil and rub it into your hands, working it into every crack and blister. It stings. But it helps. You lean against the warm stone and take a bite of the biscuit. Stale, a little sweet. Still better than half the stew served on feast days. As you chew, you let your eyes wander to the ceiling beams. You've stared at these planks for years. You've watched them drip, warp, creak. You once saw a lizard live up there for a whole summer. It had more leisure time than you ever will. A creak near the door makes you turn. It's Brixius. He raises a hand in farewell. You nod back. He disappears into the dark. You linger a little longer. You always do. Finally, you gather your things, your rag, your sandals, your aching spine, and push open the heavy wooden door. It groans in protest like it, too, has had a long day. Outside, Rome is bathed in the glow of lamplight and moonshine. The breeze carries hints of roasted nuts, baked bread, and faint garum fumes. You step into the street, one foot sore, the other limping. Cleanup is done. The stones of Sabura are still warm beneath your feet, soaking up the day's sun and echoing with the steps of late, night strollers, drunks, and that one lute player who refuses to stop playing even though he only knows 3 chords. You make your way home, tunic clinging in patches, hair stiff with salt and soap. But before you collapse into your straw mattress and dream of never seeing a chamber pot again, there's one more stop on your route, the bathhouse. The bathhouse, Rome's original spa, gym, community center, and rumor mill all rolled into one steamy, echoing marble wonderland. You step into the thermae, greeted by the warm scent of cedar wood, perfumed oils, and 100 unwashed stories. The sound of water splashing, laughter, and mild philosophical debate bounces off the tiled walls. A man to your left is arguing that Caesar once faked a limp to seduce a senator's wife. You don't question it. You're just here to get clean. You strip, place your soiled tunic in a clay basket, and step into the tepidarium. The warm room. It's pleasantly steamy, the heat sinking into your bones like a long, lost friend. You sit on a stone bench, close your eyes, and just breathe. No vats, no Flavius, no tunics with fish guts, just warm. Next comes the caldarium, the hot bath. You lower yourself in slowly, like a reluctant olive, into hot oil. The water bites at first, but then it envelops you, easing muscles you forgot existed. You scrub yourself down with a strigil, curved and bronze, scraping off a day's worth of clay, sweat, and shame. The dirt peels away in long ribbons, swirling in the water like poetic evidence of your labor. Nearby, someone drops a ladle. It clangs like a gong. You don't even flinch. After soaking long enough that you consider becoming a prune merchant, you rise and wander into the frigidarium, the cold plunge. It's shocking, sharp, and exactly what your mind needs. The chill slaps you awake and steals the remaining fog from your thoughts. You dry off with a borrowed cloth, comb through your hair, and apply a few drops of rose oil, just enough to mask the underlying aroma of ammoniated foot stew. It's not much, but it's something. On your way out, you pass a man reclining on a marble bench, telling a group of eager listeners about the time he personally advised the emperor on toga folds. You roll your eyes and smile. Rome is built on stories, and tonight you've earned the right to scoff at a few. Back on the street, your skin is still warm from the baths. You pick up a bowl of lentil stew from a vendor on the corner. He knows you by name now and gives you extra barley without asking. The stew is thick, salty, and glorious. You eat leaning against a wall, watching the world stroll by lovers, walking arm in arm, a soldier bragging to a wine girl, a child dragging a wooden sword and fighting invisible foes. Your feet throb, your hands are bandaged, your belly is full. You head home, a few blocks past the baker's stall and the incense shop that never opens before noon. You climb the stairs to your insula, that cramped hive of noise and life, and unlock the door to your room. Inside, it smells of straw, burnt oil, and you. But it's dry, and it's yours. You light a lamp, check the chamber pot, and flop onto your mat. The ceiling beams stretch above you like old ribs. Outside, a dog barks once, then stops. Peace. You massage your fingers. The soap rash is worse tonight, but nothing a cabbage leaf wrap and a bit of wine can't fix. You pour a splash into a cup, sip, and close your eyes. You think about the laundry. You think about the day. You think, maybe tomorrow, you'll finally ask Flavius for a raise. And then you laugh, because you know exactly how that'll go. It's quiet now. The sort of quiet that only comes in Siberia once every candle's burned low and every brawler stumbled home. From your rooftop perch, yes, you climb those creaky stairs one last time. You watch Rome from above, your knees drawn up, the remains of your stew bowl cooling beside you. The city spreads wide and golden, lit not by electric lights or neon signs, but by oil lamps and flickering torches. And overhead, the stars take their sweet time. You lean back against a chimney, rubbing your sore calves, the scent of hot clay, and faint sulfur still clinging to your skin. From up here, you can almost pretend you're someone else. Not a Phalonica worker. Not the bucket hauler, vat stomper, monkey towel savior. Just a Roman under the stars. The rooftops are their own world. A secret one. Quiet conversations drift from neighboring balconies. A woman sings softly while folding linen. Somewhere, Someone plucks at a lyre. You hear giggles from the apartment above. Someone's telling a ghost story, probably about the haunted laundromat in Trastevere where garments vanish mid-scrub. A Phalonica folktale, if ever there was one. You stare up at the night sky, thick with constellations. There's Jupiter, bright and bold. Mars, red and watchful. You trace lines between them with your finger, drawing your own version of the Roman pantheon. Do the gods ever do laundry, you wonder? Or are their tunics forever pristine, kissed clean by divine light? More likely they have people like you. Mortal hands, cracked and calloused, who scrub and stomp and rinse until the cloth shines enough to impress Olympus. You sigh. The breeze lifts your hair, slightly, cool and sweet. For a moment, the city feels less like a roaring beast and more like a sleeping animal, gentle and at rest. Your thoughts drift to your fellow workers. Gaius, who joked even when his feet bled. Brictus, who swore the vats were cursed, and that singing kept demons away. Livia, who could fold a toga so sharply it could double as a weapon. You're part of a strange family, all bonded by sweat, soap, and the endless war against grease and wine stains. You remember your first day, years ago, how the vats had terrified you, how you slipped and fell face, first into a cloak that belonged to someone 3 ranks above your pay grade. You'd cried, not because of the fall, because of the shame. Now, you're the one who teaches the new kids how to twist and press, how to identify dye damage, how to avoid getting yelled at when the Lanista shows up unannounced. Progress? You shift slightly, gazing toward the forum in the distance. By day, it's a storm of noise and power plays. At night, it looks peaceful, almost sacred. You can barely make out the columns. You wonder what plots were hatched there today. Which senator made which enemy? Which nobleman whispered which secret? None of them think about laundry, but their reputations ride on it. One poorly rinsed tunic, and a magistrate becomes a mockery. A streak of olive oil on a bride's veil, and scandal whispers louder than Saturn's bell. You know this. You've scrubbed the shame off more silk than most people ever wear. The dog with the floppy ear appears again, trotting along the edge of the roof like he owns it. He sits beside you, sniffs the stew bowl, and sighs. You hand him the last scrap of barley. He takes it gently, tail thumping once in gratitude. Below, the streets empty out. A lone vendor hauls his cart home. A pair of guards stroll by, their armor catching the moonlight. Somewhere far off, a flute plays a lullaby. You close your eyes, just for a second. You feel the wind brush your cheek. You think about the olive trees near your aunt's village. The way the earth smells when it rains, the color of wine as it soaks a toga. You think, maybe, this isn't forever. Maybe one day you'll save enough for a stall of your own. Not a Phalonica, maybe perfumes, or combs, or fabrics dyed in colors that don't require fish guts or fermented plants. Maybe. But for tonight you're here. A Roman, a washer, a watcher of stars. The stars inch westward, the breeze softens, and the rooftops begin to still. Even the city seems to exhale, its 1,000 moving parts settling into the quiet pulse of midnight. You rise slowly, careful not to wake the floppy-eared dog now, curled beside your empty bowl, and make your way back down the creaking steps. Your room is dark, the oil lamp down to its stub, casting a low amber glow across the stone wall. You unroll your mat, stiff with old straw, and sit. There's no ceremony to bedtime in your world. No silk sheets or lullabies. Just the weight of the day folding around you like a damp cloak. You lie back, arms crossed over your chest, listening to the familiar symphony of Subura night sounds. The occasional bark. A laugh, too loud and too late. The whistle of wind through alleyways. A baby wailing 2 floors up. The rumble of a late cartwheel clattering over stone. And yet you're at peace. Because despite the stench, the strain, the stains, and the stomping, you survived another day in Rome's most ancient industry. And not just survived, you triumphed. You scrubbed silk, rescued a senator's dignity, fended off tunic thieves, calmed a bucketful of vinegar chaos, and outwitted Crispinus the inspector. Barely. You stretch, wincing at the stiffness in your shoulders. Your hands feel like someone else's, knotted and rough. The soap rash itches, but it's all temporary. Tomorrow will come, just like always, and you'll rise again, barefoot and bleary, ready to wade back into the vats. Maybe you'll finally get that raise. Or maybe Flavius will hand you a cloak with actual eagle feathers and demand you restore its imperial luster. And you'll do it. Because Rome doesn't run on gold and marble alone. It runs on sweat, on labor, on hands like yours. You glance at the tunic draped over your stool, drying from its rinse earlier. The stitching is uneven, your work, but it's clean, neat, ready to be worn into another story. You smile faintly. Maybe tomorrow you'll sneak out early, climb the Palatine Hill, and see the sunrise above the domes. You've never had time before. But maybe tomorrow, sleep tugs at your eyelids. Your breath slows. The Phallonica fades from your thoughts. So do the vats, the soap, the endless jokes about fermented fish. Instead, you dream of laurel leaves fluttering in the wind, of a silk tunic that folds itself, of stars that never stain, even under a downpour of garum. The streets of Sabura are hushed now, painted in silver and soot. Somewhere a torch flickers its last. Somewhere else, a final door creaks closed. And you, stretched out on your mat, breathing soft and slow, have earned your rest. The rhythms of your day, the stomp, swish, fold, and rinse, ebb into the distance like waves receding from the shore. Even your hands, rough as they are, now lie still. No more garments to scrub, no more pots to lift. Just the gentle, lulling hum of night. Above you, the city sleeps. The senators, the shopkeepers, the gossiping matrons, and the sticky, fingered children. Even the emperor, wrapped in his dyed silks and scented oils, has closed his eyes. And here you are, one soul among many, a thread in Rome's vast and ever spinning tapestry. But tonight, there's no weight on your chest, no urgency, no orders. Just the warm hush of your own breath and the soft tick of oil cooling in its lamp. So let your thoughts drift like laundry on a breeze. Let the stars blur. Let the streets fall away. You've walked them. You've washed them clean. For now, they can wait. Because in this moment, in this dark and quiet corner of the eternal city, you are home.